You are listening to the Bright Life Podcast, all about ways to stay inspired, chase your dreams, and find more gratitude in the highs and lows of the journey. I'm your host, Jessica Johnson. I'm a business owner, a part-time digital nomad, a self-growth junkie, a believer in other big-hearted women, and am all about sharing tips, tricks, lessons learned, and encouragement so we can all live our biggest, brightest lives. You ready? Let's do this. Hey girl, hey! All right, I have a fun little episode for you today, and I hope that this one really shakes you open if you ever have this feeling of you don't know what you want. I hope to really help you be able to clarify what you do want so you can go out and get it, right? Like awareness is that first step. But I know that sometimes, and I've been in this situation before, and sometimes I have to revisit it even still, is I play this game with myself where I'm like, I don't know what I want. I'm like, if I knew, I would go after it. And it becomes so frustrating, right? Because you see all these people who do seem to know what they want or what they want to do with their life. And you're like, if I knew, I would do it, but I don't have that luxury. And so I really want to help speak to you if you're in that position because I've been there. And there are a few questions that have really helped me. So the first big thing I think to remember, and I have a whole nother episode on this, it's all about how you can trust your desires. You can trust the desires of your heart. So if you have ever felt like your desires were something to contend with or to reason with, or you almost had to reel them in because you couldn't want them, you couldn't have them, that's the first big thing and big hurdle I think to get over is, what if your desires were actually given to you for a reason? Right? Because look at all the people in the world, and none of us have the exact same desires. I even think about it in terms of careers. Thank goodness there's people out there who want to be surgeons, who want to be police officers, who want to be lawyers and musicians. Like, I am thankful for those roles, but I don't want to be any of those things. And let me tell you, like, you probably should be very glad I'm not some of those, right? Like, I would pass out if I was a surgeon for sure. And so think about that. Even the world works because everyone has a slightly different desire. And so I always think about it too, where it's like, I think the desires that you have can be a map to where you're meant to go. And they're not something that you have to fight. They're not something that you have to almost resist or rearrange so they feel right. What if you could just trust those desires as your first starting step? And there's no desire that's wrong, that's too small, that's bad. But those desires just can actually be fuel for you, and you can pay attention to those curiosities and see where they're speaking to you. Another thing too, where you can look for your desires, and I have another episode that speaks more fully to this if you're interested in that, but is almost like, is there anything that triggers you about someone else? Is there anything that feels kind of, I like the word activating. I heard someone describe it like that before. Is there anything that activates you when you see someone else have it? Whether it's the relationship or the children or the travel or the business or whatever it may be, right? Like the career. Is there something there? Whenever you're triggered over and over again, I think there's something in there that's like unresolved in you. That's something about yourself going, I kind of want that thing, but I'm afraid to say it. Or I kind of want that thing, but I don't know how I'm going to create that in my life. Or I kind of want that thing, but I don't feel like I have permission to be that way. Anytime I feel that triggering, I look to that and I say, there's a desire being activated that's just taking another form. It's almost taking its shadow side. So if I did have permission to be any way, if I did have the personality, or if I was born anyway, is there part of me that wishes she could be that way, right? And kind of giving life and permission and a little bit of room to that desire to even come in. I think a few other questions that can be really helpful is, if you could have anything, what would you want? And almost journaling to this, because so much I think of calling out your desires and realizing what you want is realizing that we protect ourselves a lot of the time, right? Like we tell ourselves we don't want things, or we can't have things, or those things aren't meant for us, or those things are wrong, almost as a protective mechanism. So kind of as you journal, just give your brain the space to say, if you could have anything, if anything was good, what would you want? If it was all equally good, if there was no good, there was no bad, what would you want? Right? Like if it was all equal too, right? Because we make this hierarchy of like, well, I should want this, or this is more noble, or this is better. No. We're just trying to cut to the heart of what you want if it's hard to access. So if it's all equal, and if anything that you wanted to do in the world, if anything you wanted to have was all good, what then would you want? And slowly you might start to feel it thawing a little bit inside you. You might start to feel it come out of you. And so just start to play with that list, right? And just start to see what comes up there and be curious about it. Because remember, nothing's wrong. If anything, we're just really good at protecting ourselves. And so we're just trying to play around and see like what's locked inside that we maybe haven't even noticed before, right? Another really good one is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And I always think back to this story because I talk about the day that I first went to New York City, and it was such a monumental day and like life lesson for me because I had dreamed of New York forever since I was a little girl. But the day that I went there, I met a girlfriend and we looked all around the city. We toured so many places. We had a broker help us, and I was like 25 years old and I didn't have money. I didn't know people there, and it was so overwhelming. Everything that could have gone a little crazy that day did, because we were just so fresh to the big city, right? We got lost everywhere. I started crying in the broker's office because I just got so overwhelmed by having to pay so much money, and they were probably like, this girl is never going to make it here. But I remember laying awake on the floor of this New York City apartment that night. She was sleeping on the couch and I was on the floor, and I remember just looking up, laying awake, and wondering, what do I do? Like, I don't know if I can make it here. Do I really want this? Do I really want to be in the middle of all of this and working so hard to just survive and figure out the subway system and all that stuff? And this question came to me of, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And instantly, I knew that I would leave behind my home and even my family for a while, and I would go on this adventure and I would fulfill this desire and dream of my heart, and it would be crazy, and I'd have wild experiences and adventures, and I'd probably fail and cry a lot more, but I wanted it. Even if I was afraid, that's what I wanted. And so that can be something that you use to draw it out of you too. And I would recommend just journaling on these because our brains and bodies are so protective of us, and a lot of times we won't even let ourselves access the things we really want if we don't give ourselves the space to think about it with better questions. So if you weren't afraid, what would you want? What would you do? What would you have? If you could have anything, if nothing was off limits, and if you dreamt it or you asked for it, you got it, what would it be? And if it was all equally good, what would you want? What would you do? What would you have? And if nothing was better than the other, it's another way of saying it, right? But they all just help in a little slightly different spin. If there was no right order, no right way of doing things, no right order of having things, no hierarchy of good versus bad, what would you want first? What would you do first? What would you have first? And I just hope that those guide you to a place where you can start to feel little inklings of curiosity and little inklings of desire. And once you get them, the next logical question may be, what do I do with all this? And I think that you just start to play with them. I think you start to go and chase your curiosities, as I like to call it, and you just follow with a small little step after the one that lights your heart on fire, right? Like you just start to go, and if you do want to go back to school for something, just start looking at programs. You don't have to go and sign up for a program and invest in a tuition overnight, but maybe you just go and look and see what's even available. If you always wanted to do nutrition or wellness, like maybe you sign up for a little class, or you go and get some groceries tonight and go cook. If you wanted to take pilot lessons, maybe you just go to an airport tonight and you just lay and, or I don't know, I'm picturing like an outdoor airport, right? Like the old movies where you just lay and you watch the planes. And then the next week, maybe you go and you just check out like a Groupon or something for a pilot's class or things like that, where it becomes this small step and you're almost easing into these things where, we're not trying to spook them. We're not trying to say you have to do them overnight. But you can start to play with them and you can start to pull them out of you and start to live with that excitement and inspiration around you actually do have some desires and you actually do have things that you still want and that you still can be and you can still do and you can still have. And how amazing that they're living inside of you, almost just staying in their garden, but they can be drawn out and you can get to know yourself in this way. So for me, that's been so inspiring, and it's been such an amazing starting place, even in this entrepreneurial journey where, I was working a marketing tech job and I had some time in my evening, so I started taking nutrition classes, and that ended up becoming what led me to entrepreneurship. I just fell so in love with nutrition and learning, and I'd always been trying to figure out how to eat and how to be healthy, and I really loved it. And I just decided I need to teach other people this. Now that I finally figured this out, I wanted this for so long, let me go teach others. And so that led me to leave my corporate job and to start a business. And that didn't end up being the exact right model for me, but it taught me a lot. And it gave me this amazing training ground of working through my own blocks and limiting beliefs and getting out there and honestly just practicing all the marketing and business building stuff. And I, iterated that to realize I really loved being creative and teaching people. I didn't necessarily want to be on call after call after call day because as an introvert, it could feel almost a little bit draining once I really started to book full with more clients. Even though I loved the individual relationships, once it stacked on so much, it started to feel like a little different beast. And so I thought, well, I love teaching people though. I love mentoring. Maybe I can do that with writing and I can combine my marketing love and I can teach people wellness through writing. And so that evolved into, a content business and an agency. And now I get to mentor others in writing. So you don't have to know where your desires are even going to take you. The plan might not even be the actual desire. It might just be the path that it's going to put you on. Right? But it's just that curiosity, I think, that can change everything, where it really took me from sitting in my little apartment in my 20s being like, I'm so frustrated because everyone else has this career trajectory and knows what they want to do and has it all figured out, and I'll work hard and I'll do whatever it is, but I don't know what it is, to just removing that pressure and being like, I can play with this. I can experiment. There's no pressure here. The only pressure is self-imposed from the outside. So it allows you to almost just open up to your desires again and to the life that they will lead you to, which could be something you can't even see today and could be beyond your wildest dreams. And that's always my hope for you and for all of us. So I hope this helps you. If you've ever said, I wish I knew what to do. I don't really know what I want to do, but I wish I did. I'm just not one of those people. Try and spend some time on these and see if they really help you get to a place where you can name even one desire and then message me and let me know what it is. And I will celebrate with you that we came up with one, but I'm hoping for a lifetime of so many more, and here to just totally celebrate that win with you. If this episode resonated with you, I have 2 things you are going to love. One is a Bright Life workbook full of practices you can use to get clear on what your version of your brightest life looks like and fearlessly move towards it every day. And another is a copywriter starter kit full of beginning steps to create a copywriting business that gives you the freedom to travel the world working from anywhere, to replace a corporate salary as your own boss, and to do creative work that lights you up every day. It's lessons I've learned in creating my own content business, and I'm excited to share it with you if you're curious about doing the same. I will link these in the show notes. I hope these serve you. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you back here next week as we all pursue our biggest, brightest lives together.